Good evening. On behalf of Stanford Healthcare and the Cancer Supportive Care Program, I would like to welcome you to our first lecture series in the South Bay. Survivorship, the importance of nutrition and exercise in the cancer journey. It is my pleasure to introduce our first speakers of the evening, Julie Grosvenor and Reagan Fedrick.
Hi, everybody. Thank you. Thank you for coming. I am an American College sports medicine cancer exercise trainer, and so is Reagan. And we are pleased to be here tonight to speak to you about your plan for exercise and through survivorship. So first question that we like to start with, if you want to just raise your hand, how many of you are already incorporating exercise into your weekly lifestyle? Great, great, good. Gives us a good start. Thank you. Good for you.
True. Yeah, I would say the fact that you showed up tonight is good. It means that you're interested in these two topics. So that's kind of like at least the first step towards success, yes? And then hopefully you'll leave tonight with a few motivational tips, or we'll be able to plant a few seeds that you can walk away with and then put some things into motion. So with both nutrition and exercise. So to get started, we're going to talk a little bit about the guidelines of cancer and exercise. They actually just came out a few years ago. Are we on it? Yeah, sorry. So they just, a couple of years ago, had a specific guideline, some guideline protocols come out. And this was with the Department of Human Health and Sciences, or Human Health and Science, as well as American College of Sports Medicine, American Cancer Society, and just a panel of experts. So oncologists were involved, epidemiologists. They based it on hundreds of research or data that, from research that's been done on cancer and exercise. Strength training 2 times a week, and I'll go into detail in a few minutes, a little bit more on the.
Is it written anywhere, or do I have to click notes, do you think? I don't remember, I think you're saying.
You want?
Okay, we will actually get your information. That's a really good question. Did we make actual printouts of these slides? We did not, but we can send them to you. We could do that through
Maybe email?
email. Is that okay for me to say, Sarah?
Yeah.
So Sarah has your email information if you signed in, and we will follow up with everybody with the slides. Is that okay? Thank you. That's a good question in the beginning.
So 2 times a week, strength training. Incorporated, trying to recruit all of the major muscle groups. And again, I'll go into a little more detail with that topic in a few minutes. Cardiovascular, 150 minutes a week. So I always like to tell people, you take 5 days a week, 30 minutes, or you go 7 days a week, that's like 21, 22 minutes of exercise, right? I'd like to think that we could all find 20 minutes a day or 30 minutes a day to just move our bodies, to elevate our heart rate, to, breathe more oxygen. And then flexibility, range of motion, every day. Just, so stretch a little, just move the joints, I tell you like with the spine, fold forward, extend, move your shoulders a little bit. But try to keep the joints fluid, like try to keep mobility in the joints. And I guess go on to the next slide.
Sure. So we're going to do that. You can roll it. There
Okay,
you go.
thank you. Sorry, now I got it. So benefits of exercise. So many benefits. But we just wanted to kind of highlight a few of them, and especially just from the years of experience and what we know from research and data, the things that can help with people who are going through cancer treatment and or beyond treatment. Overall, it improves the quality of life. So there's short-term effects of treatment, so while you're going through treatment and or beyond, but improve your quality of life. So you're more functional, typically more energetic because of just the general benefits of stamina and endorphins that are released with exercise, psychological benefits that come with that. So typically, just like the positive attitude and some of the feeling and control, the strength, the gains that you get. Reducing fatigue and stress, there's tons of data on that. So fatigue, stress, anxiety, helping to manage the fear that sometimes can be associated with a diagnosis and the treatment plan with a diagnosis, and even after you go through the treatment, the worries. So just helping to sort of create some calmness and stability. Helps with weight management, and we put weight management because it can help with weight gain and or weight loss. You can use exercise kind of on both fronts there. Supporting the cardiovascular health. So, cardiovascular exercise is one thing, and then, like I said, strength training, but on a regular basis doing cardiovascular exercise to support the heart, just to kind of on a regular basis bring in oxygen, the capacity of oxygen as we train over time, and we'll speak to that some in a moment, just the importance of progressing as you start an exercise program. So you can start wherever you are, but in time you want to make sure you continue to progress and challenge yourself. Enhanced sleep. There's a lot of data on that as well. It's just typically known that people who have a regular exercise program sleep better or have better, kind of patterns of sleep with more regular hours and such with less interruption. And increasing bone density. Strength training especially, weight-bearing activity, one, so that means like when we're, anything where we have our body weight in motion, that's considered weight-bearing. Also strength training programs. So using, for example, my bicep muscle in front of my arm, when I'm doing this exercise, as the muscle's contracting and then releasing, it's a little bit of tug that happens in the joints that affects the bones and can help increase bone density over time with regular exercise. Do you want to add anything to that?
I will do it in the next phase.
Right. So the next thing, sorry. Here we go. Components of a good wellness program. So I love to talk to people about this. And I think in general, when you think about your exercise routine, it's important to have variation throughout the week. But the 5 components that I like to stress, one being strength training, and I told you I'd come back to that. So how many of you are currently doing a strength training or resistance training program?
Used to do and stopped,
Used to and stopped?
Used to and
Okay,
stopped.
but I'm gonna start with the program through
Perfect.
Stanford.
good, good, good.
Swimming is part of strength training or not?
Is what? Swimming?
No.
Yeah. Yes and no. I mean, some of the resistance that comes from using the pole against water, but the challenge there is your body weight. But when your body's in water, sort of the negative effect of not having weight in the activity. But I still think it's in general, I recommend swimming in an overall exercise program. I think if it's something that you do once or twice a week, or if it's part of your overall routine, great. There are a lot of benefits from swimming.
Yeah.
So strength training, you can use your body weight, for example, push-ups or squats, doing those type of things. That's one form of strength training. At home, you could have a set of dumbbells. You could use a resistance band, just like those cost, I think, $8, $10. You can find them kind of anywhere now. I think Walgreens sells them, Target, you can get them online. So a resistance band to target all the major muscle groups. If you have a membership to a gym, you can use equipment, resistance training equipment. Yoga, for example, you're using your body weight in motion, so that's a form of strength training. So lots of different ways to incorporate that into your regular routine. And we want to try basically to target all of your major muscle groups. So make sure you're doing things for the chest, for the shoulders, for the arms, for the back, for the midsection, the torso, the core, your abdominal muscles, your legs, a lot of big muscles in the lower body. So your quadriceps are in front, hamstrings in back, gluteal muscles, lower legs, calf muscles. So you want to try to, as you're designing that program, whether you're doing it on your own or you work with someone to develop it, make sure that you're recruiting all of the major muscle groups in the body. So I typically tell people to try to find a program with 10 to 15 exercises, and you want to work those muscle groups within kind of a zone of 10 to 20 repetitions of a certain exercise. So for example, if I were doing a chest push, I would want to do that for at least 10, if not 15 or 20 times with a weight that I can manage without fatiguing myself completely. And over time, your body will respond and adapt, and you'll continue to sort of push with that and grow. Cardiovascular exercise, again, we said 150 minutes a week. That's the general guideline, the recommendation, a starting point. So you start wherever you are. If that feels like too much in the beginning because of stamina, fatigue, and or just like if you're deconditioned or you're just beginning a program, anything is better than not. So if it's 10 minutes a day, great. If I walk the block 5 times, great. Whatever you can do, you do. And then the hope is if you consistently do it, you'll get better. And it will, your time will grow. Balance training. So that is where, I think you're going to speak to this a little bit more. But one of the push there, we want to create more stabilization in the body and ultimately prevent injuries, prevent falling. I mean, we hear way too often, right? So-and-so fell and broke a wrist or broke a bone or a shoulder injury. So if you train your body to be better balanced, it actually will get better, will respond, and you'll be more reactive and more stable just as we sort of walk through our daily activities of life. Relaxation, well, I should say flexibility. We talked about that earlier, so stretching, range of motion exercises, just trying to keep the body as mobile as we can. And then relaxation and rest. So I think whatever you do, if that means reading a book, if it means taking a nap, taking a walk on the beach, having lunch with a friend, having a cup of tea with someone, however you do it, just make sure you don't lose that balance in life. You know, we talk about like the do with exercise especially, it's like go and do something. But I think a big part of the whole equation is also to make sure you have time to slow down and relax and to sort of restore yourself.
All right, so next slide. So we kind of laid out the framework that you'd be looking at for a general composition of, I need to do exercise. But then the next question comes quite often for anybody, but especially if they faced any type of change in their lifestyle or their body, whatever has happened, how do I get this started? And I think sometimes your knowledge is there, you know, okay, I gotta do this, or I've done this before, but I'm tired. I've just gone through something major. How do I get this going again? Where we want to come from, and certainly our choice in being cancer exercise trainers is saying, sure, find somebody who's got some knowledge that can motivate you, but it's also find somebody who understands the path that you've been on. That doesn't mean you have to spend all your time with a cancer exercise trainer, but it does mean find somebody who's sensitive to the changes that your body has gone through, just like you're sensitive to the changes that your body's gone through. And you need to have a safe place to begin. So before we would even get started in saying, this day you're walking, we're gonna wanna know where you've come from. So find a place and time to get started, to acknowledge where you've been, pat yourself on the back and say, I did it. Here's my next goal. I'm gonna get started with exercise. And that's gonna be, I'm gonna step out the door and walk today like I haven't walked before. I'm actually gonna wander down and see what gym program there is. I'm gonna pick up the Stanford catalog and see what I can do. Or maybe I'll make an appointment with a cancer exercise trainer in the program, and we can help you lay out that program, right? I mean, I kind of did that as a fun way, but I'm actually being quite serious because sometimes it just takes a little bit more planning to get that foot in front of you, that motivation to try this exercise. But over everything else, it's to keep you safe, okay? Do no harm is the biggest message that we want to send. At the same time that we're saying, you can do it, all right? So part of this on this slide is saying mix it up. As you're looking at your plan, and we looked at the different variety of it would be walking, it would be swimming, it would be finding a dumbbell at a Target store and buying that 2-pound dumbbell and saying, okay, twice a week I'm gonna try it. Because there's gonna be a place and time where you're gonna have to kind of schedule this, so the getting started is making a plan. It's going to include simple things of saying, I want to change my health through physical activity. I wanna be strong through physical activity. I wanna sleep better. It could be, all of those goals are gonna come into deciding where that mixing it up and trying new things is gonna come in. The balance and the stability exercises, I definitely want you to think about, that's part of what I need to start saying to myself in getting started. Chemotherapy has an effect on our balance. You probably know this. If you're sitting there as a caregiver or a survivor, there's something that changes. It's not only going through treatment, but sometimes it's just the rest. It's the inactivity that we've had. Your balance will change. A simple place to start, which as you would want to work on your balance, would be brushing your teeth. Everybody has to brush our teeth, right? You brush in the morning, if you're a good boy and girl, and you brush in the evening, 2 minutes each. But the safety comes and you've got a counter. So if I can challenge myself, I'm brushing my teeth, I can hold onto this counter and I can hold my left foot up. Electric toothbrush is a lot easier, but come on, you can handle it. And you have the safety of being able to put that foot down or hand on the counter. That's my morning brush. My evening brush, brushing my teeth, my right foot goes up. Again, safety. So this is kind of the simple steps. How do I get started? And we say up there, we'll do a balance activity. And you're left going, where would that come from? Start with brushing your teeth. So it's things like this that we need to start thinking about. How do I mix it up? How do I challenge myself to return to the place that I want to be in as a survivor? It's different. This last piece, getting a medical clearance. So this is unusual for us when we're training people. It's not usually something that you need to have when you're going into an exercise program. But we're putting it in because the place where we would want you to make sure you've talked to your doctor is if you have a situation with, say, a cardiac event. Are you in combination of having gone through chemo as well as statins? Clear it with your doctor, talk to us. The biggest one is really if you're in a situation from a hematologic cancer and you need to be more cautionary. That we will say, make sure that your doctor knows what you're doing. Come back and tell us or show us a note that says it's okay. Other than that, it's pretty much a choice that you're making right then and there to begin to take care of yourself. And most practitioners are pretty excited that you've thought about it. And I would actually recommend, in working with oncologists, that you tell them, because sometimes they completely forget that that's part of the program. If we could have any impact, not only on survivorship, it would be an impact on the oncology world, that becomes the prescription pad of, you've done it, good for you, you're strong. Now we need to work on the muscles and the bones, because regardless of how long or how much, any type of chemo is going to put a stress on that bone density. That's where that conversation with strength training comes in again. No matter what journey you've been on, but especially if it's that long-term care of chemotherapy, you have to find a way to get resistance exercise into your life. I can't tell you how much that just makes me so excited to sit in front of somebody and they're interested in lifting some weights. Tends to be my wheelhouse, but still, even beyond that, it means that you're working on a place inside your body that needs you to focus on it. So if I can emphasize anything, strength training's got to be a big one. So let's roll. Oops, sorry, playing with the mouse. Next statement, exercise can be a part of every survivor's lifestyle. So it has no barriers to the type of cancer, it has no barriers to age, it has no barriers to gender. So why wouldn't we, right? We can go back definitely to that medical clearance and saying, okay, I might have a little barrier depending on the safety of where I am right now, but in every survivor's life, there is something that you can do in a form of movement or activity that will have an impact on the condition of your body. It can be starting slow. And if I could use a mantra that's from our cancer exercise training, it's from Dr. Katie Schmitz. It's kind of a play on a Teddy Roosevelt quote. And what she says is you start exercising by going slow. Do what you can, use what you have. What does that mean? It means that in my plan today, I can just get up and walk around the dining room table. That's all I've got. Thumbs up from us. That was a choice to move. And maybe 2 days later, it's 2 laps around the dining room table. Go slow. Or if you're beyond that and you're able to take a walk, you wouldn't start by saying, I'm going to go back to where I was before. Because if there's anything that we've learned in an example of looking at cancer survivors, it is a new you. And it is some new choices that you need to make. And you can, quite honestly, I've seen survivors do this in the training they've done. Sometimes you can come out stronger and healthier on the other side, post-diagnosis, from the choice to exercise. But start in a place that's safe. Go slow, do what you can, use what you have. And then make an appointment with a cancer exercise. But again, we go back to that phrase that anything is better than nothing, right? It seems kind of a flippant way to express it sometimes. But if we put some meaning behind it and say it really does matter that you get up out of the chair to walk across the hall, or you voice to your family, I need to go on a walk today, but it's only going to be half a block or so, do that. We've had certainly a different exposure to different survivors and their needs. I've trained people where the program may go on for months, but it might take 2.5 months to get from the front door to the back of the gym. To me, that's success, because that's trying each time. And that's getting to a place where you know where you are and you're able to say, okay, I tried, I'm going to try again. That's a big part of that plan, and that's a big part of that choice. Overall message from American Cancer Society, from the American College of Sports Medicine, as well as the roundtable discussion of what cancer survivors can do in exercise, was what we talked about. It really is the general information of 150 minutes, but backing up and going into go slow, do what you can, the overall message is just avoid inactivity. There are places in the journey of cancer where you know that the cumulative effects are going to make it so you just can't. And that's okay. And that's where a trainer or a group has the understanding to know where you've been. It's a serious component of looking at either the person that you're helping taking care of as a caregiver or as a survivor, that you listen to those days. Pushing past it isn't worth it. And there's times where you're just going to need to have the rest. 1 day, 1 week, 1 month, maybe 3 months. That is completely understandable. It really is. And it's okay. It's finding that place again in the mindset of when I can, I will try to do this. Try often leads to do. My little Yoda, I must want Star Wars and put it right there. So again, we've started with how do I get my plan started? And then the next part is saying, let's talk about this. What are my goals? And I think that's a good place to start. When we sit down with survivors and we're making a plan for exercise, that's one of the places where we start. What is your goal? Is it simply walking the block? Is it returning to a marathon status? We have the whole variety. Many times it's, I wasn't doing any exercise before, now I've got to. You got to get me started. So find out where those goals are. Talk about them with your doctor, find a family member, find a friend, and just say, can I just talk this out with you? I mean, I'm feeling like I just need to organize my thoughts. Use the people around you. Quite often there's people who are wanting to help anyway, and maybe that's the conversation that you can use that friend for. I just need 5 minutes of your time. I've got these goals, can you help me lay that out? Is it 2 to 3 days a week that I'm taking a walk? Or is it making a goal that when you come see me, you've committed to come visit me, will you make sure that I get outside and I just go around the block? So this is part of what we're talking about of getting started and getting connected with exercise. It's finding the plan, and then the next step, of course, is, okay, I made a plan. How do I stay motivated? So I think my usual direction in that is finding what is a high value to you. What motivates you? Is it times that you're going to see your friend? Is that motivating? You want to walk and you want to talk. Can you ask that friend to change that time that you spend together to incorporate some movement? Whatever that might be. Trying a yoga class. Maybe that doesn't sound very good. Maybe it's just going on a walk. Again, we keep saying the walking because the walking is the most accessible. Most people can handle that. But it's also incorporating the big picture that we talked about before, which is the bone density part. Win-win. So motivation is also part of the whole picture of how am I going to get this exercise plan going. Couple suggestions that we kind of talked about together: walk and talk, making a play date with grandchildren, with children, making a family plan. Quite often that's very useful. You've got kids in your house, old or young, and you can say to them, I have to walk 2 to 3 times a week. Okay? Okay. Write it on the board on the refrigerator, put it on the mirror. We need to get mom or dad out the door, or brother or sister out the door 3 times a week. It's a household thing. Sometimes that's motivating. Maybe it's the opposite thing of, this is my time when I finally get to get left alone. Is that what motivates you? Motivates me. I get out the door and I just go and I'm quiet. My earplugs go in, or I'm walking my dog. That motivates me. If you have a dog, that's really useful because your dog always wants you to go take him on a walk. So again, it's finding what's important to you and trying to find a way to make that intrinsic for the choice of exercise. And the last one is trying something new. So a little bit of a backup and trying something new. I love for people to say, okay, I've never done yoga before and I'm going to try this. Or I just bought a weight set because I know I need to work on my bone density. Again, an emphasis, go slow. Find out, because above all things, we want you to be safe and find out what that's like. So if your enthusiasm is there in making the plan, right on, be spot on with just knowing where your safety is and getting some advice from friends or doctors or a little bit of help along the way. Okay, moving on. Here we go. So I crossed into this a little bit already of finding the value of your exercise plan by finding out what motivates you and being sensitive to what's actually going to help you get going in the morning, in the evening, or what's going to be in that travel time. If we think about it, and we've given you a little bit of an example in the back, is trying to write it down. As much as you're talking about it with family and friends, put it in your calendar. Aren't we all attached to our phones a little bit? iPhones? There's a great alert on a calendar on an iPhone. Even if you're looking from a week ahead to 2 days before, to the day before. The hour before? Oh yeah, I gotta get out there and I gotta walk. Use the tools, right? That's kind of what we're thinking about with planning the exercise, because that's gonna get you back into a routine, your body's gonna get used to it. The other side of that plan is I'd like you to think about the mind-body connection to where your goals are in that healing process, which is when there's a day that it doesn't work, forgive yourself. It's okay. I just think that sometimes people can rob themselves of their initial goals by punishing themselves when it doesn't work out. No fair. There's good days and there's bad days for everybody. And some days the schedule just doesn't work. Or my dog chewed a hole in my couch. I can't take a walk now. I've got a call, whatever that might be, right? Forgive yourself when that happens. And just look at that calendar and make it a priority to try again. Big part of exercise, especially when we're recovering from something, is to say, I'm just going to try that again. If I could give you any wish, it would be having that internal voice change, to change your thoughts, to change your mind, that one, this is going to be good, potentially it's going to be fun, in addition to the messages that say, I need to do this. My body says I need to do this, my doctor says I need to do this. These like cancer exercise trainers are constantly telling me I need to do this. Please. It's having that whole picture. It's looking at exercise as a survivor, as a mind, body, spirit connection. I'm going to work on my muscles, I'm going to work on my bones, I'm going to work on all those different things that I have to do. But somewhere in that journey, I want that choice to be, it's going to make me feel good. And it will. It is one of those amazing things that even when you're tired and you're battling fatigue, and we see it happening all the time, putting out energy actually can regain energy within your body. It might take some time, but it's this wonderful cycle. And if we get really lucky, we can find a place where we actually find what those endorphins feel like. That's a pretty high scale. Sometimes those endorphins have to switch, again, changing your mind of saying success. Last month, it was just to the kitchen and back. This month, it's to the front door. In 3 months, I'm going around the block maybe 2 or 3 times. Progress. Go slow. Do what you can. Use what you have. Make a plan. Talk about safety with your doctor. Talk about a plan with your friends. Find out what is going to motivate you, what's your value, and putting this into movement and putting it into exercise, I believe you will find some success. And again, you always got us. Through the Cancer Supportive Care Program, we also have counseling sessions. So if it comes to a time when you're feeling like, I just can't make this plan or it doesn't make any sense to me, there is an option in both Palo Alto and in the South Bay to come and meet with a cancer exercise trainer, trying the classes. So certainly we're here as part of the program with the catalog in the back, then we're here to answer your questions in the end. Think about what it might take to get going. And that is where we're going to close off because we've got a tight schedule tonight. And our next phase is the other gigantic topic is going to be cancer and nutrition. And I'm going to welcome Erica and Elena back to the podium.
My name is Erica Connor. I'm a registered dietitian and certified in oncology nutrition. And Elena.
My name's Elena, and I'm also a registered dietitian, and I'm certified in nutrition support, and I've been working on getting my knowledge up for certification in oncology as well.
Excellent. So yeah, the topic of nutrition. We could talk about this for days. So we did our best to kind of consolidate things and try to make things as streamlined as possible. So a couple things. So what we're going to talk about as far as stages of survivorship, we're going to touch on recovery, talk about proteins. People always have those questions. Go into survivorship as far as nutrition with regard to survivorship specifically, and then sugar and cancer, which is always a hot topic. And usually, if this is a big forum, I guarantee that that question would come out within the first 3 minutes, usually less. So I know everybody has it. So hopefully we touch on everything, and you guys don't, you get all your questions answered. So the stages of survivorship, typically it's, survivorship really actually starts, it sounds a little strange, but really starts as soon as you're hit with a diagnosis. There are different stages, though. Obviously, the active treatment, long-term disease-free living, where really, people are just looking, okay, now what? Reducing risk for recurrence and or progression. So, that sounds a little bit confusing, but some people are actually told you have stable disease, and then it's just monitored. So that's kind of where that fits in. Prevention, and then as far as looking at prevention and treatment of the comorbidities, which basically is kind of sometimes your side effects, sometimes underlying, history that you already have prior to treatment. So things like heart disease, diabetes, sometimes kidney disease, and whether you're dealing with it before or after, but obesity as well. So. And then there's advanced cancer and end of life, which, as you can see and imagine, in all of those different stages, there's oftentimes different goals, and then also different, really kind of first of all, sometimes even how you tolerate nutrition is a big one. So the reality as far as living with cancer, through cancer, and beyond cancer. So it just depends on kind of where I am. What do I need? What works for me? And how am I feeling through the process? These are quite a few, and this can definitely change. Common challenges within the survivorship, really the survivorship reality, and this can happen anytime from really right outside of treatment, through treatment. Sometimes actually these things will happen several months after. Weight loss or gain, and that literally is one extreme to the next. And they're both incredibly difficult, oftentimes in this adventure, as I usually will say, people maybe have been fighting to keep their weight down all their life, and then all of a sudden the switch is flipped and they're fighting to keep weight on, and you never think that you'd ever get, I don't even know how to deal with this. So it can be a very frustrating process. Fatigue, which is usually number one. Taste changes, which actually can last quite a bit, or quite a long time. Swallowing difficulties, and that actually could include something like a tube feeding or anything like that. Diarrhea, constipation, and other digestive changes. So what that means is bloating. It could be things like bloating and gas. It could be cramping. It could be noises. It could be just noises. I have some people who say, I eat and then I have to get up and I have to walk away because it's just so loud. Those all fall in the other digestive changes. So that's the reality of it all. So in some solutions, and the thing about it is one of my goals, and I could speak for actually all of my colleagues, including Elena and our crew up at Palo Alto. I just want to help to reduce anxiety when it comes to food. oftentimes people say, but I read that this is good for me, and I have to eat kale, and I have to eat this. But when you're dealing with any of these possible challenges, it can be extremely difficult. And that anxiety kicks in because you're not eating salads, or you're not able to eat this for whatever reason. It tastes terrible. You don't digest it. So that's where we try to kind of help. That's where we can come in as far as to help you, number one, think of solutions to these challenges, and also help you move on of what isn't working and how can we find something else green that you can consume. So we're always looking for a healthy balance. Just like with exercise, you want balance, we want balance here as well. Very, very important. So usually smaller, more frequent meals, I tend to say that is the number one solution to any problem with regard to any kind of eating challenges. And it really is. I mean, whether you're dealing with any kind of nausea, loss of appetite, diarrhea, constipation, you name it, that's actually the key. Weight loss or gain, that's also, it fits in there. So sometimes it's just simply spreading out, realizing I can't meet my needs in 3 meals. I need to spread things out. I give permission to graze. That's oftentimes what I'll say. Finding a fiber level that is appropriate for you. And that's what a lot of this comes into play, this isn't about the front page of the paper. This isn't about an article that you read about this, extraordinary person who can, starts their day with kale and ends with, I don't know what. But that's the thing, is it's important to realize that this is an individualized adventure. And a lot of times it's just knowing that it's okay if your new system has to, be brought down as far as with regard to fiber. Otherwise, what happens is you have this perception of what you should be doing. You keep pushing it, keep pushing it, keep pushing it, and all you're doing is taking steps back, meaning that you're ending up with incredible diarrhea, which leads to dehydration, which leads to more fatigue and blah, blah, blah. So there's a lot of really important pieces of how to find a balance with eating healthy and how things are all getting along with you. Fluids, often a need for variety, meaning that there's life beyond water. If water tastes terrible, we need to flavor that water. We need to find other fluids, sometimes teas and things like that, to kind of help you meet your fluid needs. To whether you're in active treatment or after treatment, and you still need IV hydration. So it's just trying to think of a variety of things like that. And then as far as change the consistency of food also. The fast on this other side is fats, acid, salty, and sweet. This is a concept in Rebecca Katz. She has many books, and we actually have all of her cookbooks listed on a resource list that whether you've picked it up on the back and handout in the back. This is also where we manipulate the taste buds. So if you are dealing with any kind of taste changes, it's really, really important to play around with that. Because oftentimes what I will ask is, when you take a sip of water, what does that taste like? Right? Water is bland, right? Or it tastes like nothing. If it tastes bitter or if it tastes salty, you're not going to drink it. So we need to manipulate that in order to get the fluids down. Same thing as far as with regard to any kind of food is we can, and sometimes it is as far as adding a little bit of sea salt. Sometimes it is adding some maple syrup, right? So, but the other thing about that is it's not pouring the maple syrup on. It literally is a drop. In fact, my husband asks me to make kale now because he likes it, and that's a little trick that Rebecca taught me, putting a little dab, and literally I put a drop of a grade B maple syrup on the kale, It completely changes and eliminates that bitterness. My husband's like, what did you do to this? I said, just never mind, just eat it. So it's something that's again, and it all comes back to balance, okay? So that's really key. Okay, so into kind of going into the proteins, we do absolutely want to focus on your plant-based plant proteins, your nuts, your seeds, your beans, vegetables, whole grains. Now again, finding balance with regard to that as well is super, super important. We want to choose lean animal proteins, organic chicken, low-fat, or organic and low-fat dairy is really important. And then as far as including your rich omega-3 fish sources, the salmon, herring, mackerel, sardines, those are all the top ones. With fish, however, omega-3 levels vary, so it's not that, halibut is actually, I could have listed that, it's just a little lower on the list, so, but all of those important pieces. The other thing too is using, for omega-3 sources, things like your walnuts, your chia seeds, your flaxseed, ground flaxseed. The only difference with those is that basically it's the alpha linoleic acid, the ALA, and your body, we actually have to convert that, which we're okay at, but we still get some great benefits from those non-fish sources. So the key factor too with regard to the proteins is looking at, we want people to limit your red meat, which is beef, pork, and lamb. Pork is not the other white meat. They got in a lot of trouble for saying that, actually. Looking at and avoiding processed meat. Sometimes it actually takes that step back of how many, what do I eat? How much do I eat? And what kind, the quality of it. Quality and quantity are two super, super important factors when we're talking about, as far as red meat specifically, processed meat. I always say, go as low as you can go. If that's once a week, if that's once a month, that kind of thing, that's really in your best interest. One reason, I'll give you just a little tip on, everybody says, what's the deal with the red meat? A couple different things. The saturated fat, red meat consumption is also associated with higher weight, obesity. So, and actually it's sort of linked to all the kinds of things. It's linked to inactivity, it's linked to all these things. So, the other thing is also how it's cooked and the quality. I won't even go into the antibiotic resistant stuff that, So the quality is key. One thing that we will always say about protein is, it's not necessarily a specific number that you have to shoot for, or or one thing that people say when I say protein is they say, oh, I don't like meat, or I don't like chicken. And that's okay, well, let's talk about the other proteins. And so this actually kind of gives you a good example of how to kind of fit it all in. Now, an important piece too, as far as, based on kind of serving sizes, that oftentimes I say to people is, when you sit down to a meal or even a snack, just simply ask yourself, where's my protein coming from? It really helps you to kind of stabilize not only kind of how you feel, so physically, your blood sugar levels, all that kind of, but mentally, from meal to meal throughout the day. If you're trying to start an exercise regimen as well, that's also going to help keep your stamina, keep your endurance up. Where's my protein coming from? Is it coming from peanut butter or almond butter that I'm eating with my apple? Is it coming from a yogurt that I'm having as a snack? Maybe it is fish or chicken, or maybe a good quality of red meat, at a meal of some sort. So oftentimes too, people say, oh, well, I'm blending. I'm doing a blend, a fruit and vegetable blend, or I have a big salad. I still want to throw out that question, where's your protein coming from? Are there beans? Are there nuts? Are there seeds? Where's that protein coming from? Very, very important, especially in this situation. And your goals as far as to regain strength and exercise and all that kind of thing. And now, talk about survivorship.
Yay.
Well, we've been talking about survivorship, but
All right, so there's a handout, Nutrition for Healthy Survivorship. So we're kind of going to be talking through this handout and elaborating a little bit on it. But if you didn't grab one, you can grab one on your way out. So these are some bullet points, and I'm going to elaborate on them. And some of them, there's some more slides that we'll chat about. The first bullet point is plant-based diet. Eat your colors. That's not your Skittles. It's your fruits and veggies. So eating a variety of different fruits and vegetables, they all have different benefits. They're all higher in certain vitamins and minerals. They all have different benefits. And so eating a variety of them, you get to experience and have all of those benefits. And I'll go more into that in the next slide. Healthy fats. So that's talking about your unsaturated fats, choosing those over your saturated or your trans fats. So unsaturated fats are going to be a lot of times coming from plant sources. So your nuts, your seeds, your avocados, your olives, your vegetable oils, all those are great sources of unsaturated fats. Kind of anything that's liquid at room temp. Fish is also a good source of some of the really good unsaturated fats. And then again, the saturated fats are going to be coming from more animal-based products. So your well-marbled, delicious meat, your butter, your higher fat dairy, and yeah, so that's cheese and milk. And then Erica already went over it, limit red and processed meats. There was even some big news break about the whole processed meat recently, and so some people might have questions about that. But yeah, the American Institute of Cancer Research recommends that you limit these foods because of their connection with certain types of cancer, particularly colorectal cancer. And some of the ways you cook them and process them can also increase their risk of potentially being carcinogenic or causing cancer. Limiting alcohol. So a lot of different cancers have been associated with increasing their risk. Or a lot of different cancers have been associated with alcohol increasing the risk of it. So some of those would be breast, ovarian, endometrial, liver, colorectal, esophageal, and then head and neck cancer. So with some of the more hormonal-based ones, like the breast and ovarian and endometrial, alcohol actually increases the amount of estrogen in a female's body, and that can turn on some of those cancers that have that estrogen positive connection. And so alcohol is definitely a risk factor in limiting to maybe 2 drinks per day for men and 1 drink per day for women, or maybe even less than that, depending on if you are at high risk for breast cancer or ovarian cancer. Next one is healthy weight, which has kind of been a theme throughout the whole night, is maintaining a healthy weight through a healthy balanced diet and a healthy balanced physical activity regimen. So having extra fat tissue also increases estrogen in your body. So that again is going to put people who are at risk for estrogen positive types of cancers, the breast, the endometrial, and the ovarian, potentially at higher risk. So keeping your fat tissue down, maintaining a healthy weight can help reduce the estrogen in your body and put you at lower risk for some of those cancers. And then the last one, being physically active. That is, of course, very important, and it's already been emphasized, and you guys should, at this point, maybe understand why physical activity is important in reducing your risk of cancer and for survivorship. All right, the next slide. So this is about phytochemicals. And there was another handout back there that was all about phytochemicals. It's pretty sweet. So what are they? They are the plant chemicals. Phyto means plant in Greek. The plant chemicals or nutrients that provide the color, odor, and flavor in our plants. So when you pick up that melon and you smell it and it's like, yes, this is a cantaloupe, you are smelling some of those phytochemicals. And then you eat it and it tastes good, you are tasting those phytochemicals. And those little buggers have some really great side effects. So I listed all the ones, they're listed on here too. But just to kind of reiterate, they can stimulate the immune system, they can block substances we eat, drink, and breathe from becoming carcinogens. They can reduce the kind of inflammation that makes cancer growth more likely, prevent DNA damage and help with DNA repair, and so on and so forth. So this is just re-emphasizing that eating from the rainbow can be very important, and these are the reasons why. This handout really goes into the science behind it and the specific things that are in those foods that actually are helping prevent cancer and reduce our risk of cancer and recurrence. The back of it, there's a great list of what those phytochemicals are called. They're big, long names. Carotenoids might be one of the more common ones that you've heard of, but if you can't pronounce them, that doesn't matter. The more important thing is looking at the plant sources and putting them on your grocery list and buying them when you go to the farmer's market or the grocery store. And then the last column goes over the possible benefits. So again, kind of going over this list and specific to each food source and figuring out, well, wow, if I eat red, orange, and green fruits, I may inhibit the cancer cell growth. So this is a cool little handout, and you can really get some meat into why fruits and veggies are important for you. All right, so now we're gonna go into the big topic, sugar. So, how many of you have heard of a connection between sugar and cancer? Okay, how many of you have heard that sugar feeds cancer? That's a big one. How many of you get anxiety looking at this slide? Yeah, definitely. So those are all things I get asked this all the time.
Every day.
Every day. So I'm going to try and keep it brief, but what's wrong with sugar? So let's talk about that. When you have foods like refined grains, so that's going to be like your white bread or your white pasta, not the whole wheat varieties, or concentrated sweets, that's going to be everything you saw on that last slide. Your blood sugar spikes. It goes up and it comes down. And that can be a pretty high calorie blood sugar spike. You can get a lot of calories in there. And so when you go up, you're full up here, and then you're hungry when you get back down here. So you end up being hungry more quickly. And so you end up maybe eating more calories. And so what happens when you get hungry a lot and eat a lot is you tend to gain weight. So you get extra calories, and your body wants to store those extra calories as fat for when you no longer have those calories available. So yeah, you get weight gain. When you start gaining weight, your body becomes resistant to the insulin that it produces. And that puts you into that stage of maybe prediabetes or diabetes. Hyperglycemia just means high blood sugars. And so that situation where you have this insulin floating around in your blood and these blood sugars that are high are kind of what set the stage for potentially some other hormones, growth hormones being released. And that situation may be associated with some increased risk of cancer. And that's looking also at obesity. There's a lot of factors that are contributing there. Because when you're obese, you might be sedentary, you might not be having a high fiber diet, you might not be doing some of the other things that contribute to having a well-balanced diet and a well-balanced lifestyle that reduces your risk for cancer. But this situation of having high blood sugars and insulin resistance there's been some associations with potential increased risk for cancer. So what's right with sugar? It tastes really good. When I'm not feeling well, it sits well in my system. Like it goes through, maybe I'm having saltine crackers when I'm feeling nauseous. That's a refined carbohydrate, but that's what you're gonna go for when you're not feeling the greatest, because you know it's not gonna make you feel more sick. Nostalgia. My mom, every day, on my first day of school, made me chocolate chip cookies. Like, I love chocolate chip cookies. I have a great memory. It's very warm. It makes me feel good. So there's a lot of nostalgia with sweets. Around Christmas time, cookie day, there's stuff everywhere. So it's definitely, there's some right with sugar. And when you're going through treatment, what do you want? You want some comfort, right? You're feeling uncomfortable. So there's some different things and things to look at sugar is not all wrong. So the bottom line is, going down to the bottom, it's not just sugar, it's the lifestyle. So having some sugar in moderation, and in that big picture of being physically active and having a well-balanced meal, if you have a milkshake because that's what you feel like, that's all you want to eat, it's not the end of the world. I really liked what Julie said earlier. She said, if you have a bad day, it's not the end of everything. You haven't ruined it all. You can pick up and move on, and the next day you can make better choices. But it's not even a bad choice to have that milkshake. If that's all that you're going to eat, you need some sort of calories. So is there a connection between diabetes and cancer? Maybe. That is something that they're looking at, but it's more that picture of insulin resistance and hyperglycemia that comes from obesity that is more associated with the increased risk of cancer. It's not having that milkshake that one day that's going to give you an increased risk of cancer or feed that cancer. It's about the lifestyle and how everything fits together. So the USDA 2015 dietary guidelines just came out, and that was another big news break on NPR and all over the place. And it said, limit your added sugar consumption to less than 10% of your total daily calories. I thought this was awesome that they were finally addressing added sugars in our government nutrition recommendations. 10% of your total daily calories, what does that look like? I wanted to break it down a little bit. So they always use this 2,000 calorie per day just guideline. Not everyone needs 2,000 calories per day. A lot of people don't. But 10% of that is about 12 teaspoons of sugar, and 12 teaspoons of sugar is about one 12-ounce can of soda. So they're saying one 12-ounce can of soda a day is what you should limit your daily intake of added sugars to. Not very much when you consider some people have much more than that every day, just with the soda, not including all the other foods. What was that?
If I don't drink soda, how many cakes can I have?
Well, you could look up how many, you can convert the grams to teaspoons. Yeah. So, but yeah, 12 teaspoons for a 2,000 calorie diet. So if you're on a 1,500 calorie diet, it's going to be 75% of that, which is what, 9 grams. So
So if you're on the opposite end of the scale where you're trying to gain weight because you've been losing weight, you shouldn't feel guilty eating some of those white foods like the milkshakes or the white bread.
Correct. There's a time and a place for everything. But still, when you're trying to gain weight, incorporating all those fresh fruits and veggies, however you can, whether it's in a smoothie. But if you can't tolerate them because you're having GI issues, and what you can tolerate is the white food, then you need to eat the white food because you're in a better place being well nourished than letting yourself wither away because you can't eat the foods you think you should be eating. So that's a great question. Yeah. So bottom line with pictures, eat more of this instead of this, but it doesn't say eliminate this and only eat that. It just says eat more of that and instead of that.
I see a great cheese in there. That's gonna. I love
Balance.
Cheese,
Remember balance.
It's a whole food.
no, I'm serious because I love brie cheese. Do I have permission to eat a lot?
You have not a lot, but permission to eat some of it.
That a lot just went over the balance, the teeter-totter now.
So cheese, like 1 ounce, I always say is like the size of your thumb. You can include the knuckle. And that's about a good portion of cheese. So this kind of wraps it up. This is from the American Institute of Cancer Research, Obesity and Cancer. It goes through the cancers that have been associated with being overweight or obese. And so there's quite a few, like it says. And the AICR, the American Institute of Cancer Research, estimates that excess body fat is a cause of approximately 112,000 U.S. cancer cases every year. And yet, almost 70% of U.S. Of Americans are overweight or obese, and half of people don't know that there's a connection between the two. And so they haven't really isolated the reason, but like I said, there's this picture of hyperglycemia and insulin resistance and sedentary lifestyle they feel like it might be contributing to that. So protect yourself, move more, eat smart. And then this is another like summarization. I love these little images because they're fun and they really summarize everything and kind of focus in on the topics we were mentioning today. And then the last one, fun little, make food fun. And there's a really good resource guide like Erica was mentioning. These are all really good websites, and some of these images are pulled off of the websites that are on here, and you can go on there and get updated information, reliable information. There's good cookbooks, newsletters. These are things that we reference every day in our practice, and so they are things that we're sharing with you, and if you take the time to look through them, you can find some really good stuff in them.
On the resource list too, for those who do come to the cancer centers, whether it's the South Bay or Palo Alto, the ones with the asterisks actually are available in the health library. So you can come and borrow the books. Not that you have to go out and buy a new cookbook, but you can go, you can borrow those. You can also look online for a lot of these and get information. Like Rebecca Katz actually has a lot of her recipes online that you can access, things like that. So just as an example. Okay.
Okay, now we move on to questions. Yeah.
I have a question, and it's really about smoothies, because I just started drinking a lot of smoothies to try to get the kale and spinach and everything else. And when you put all that stuff in there, including like turmeric and green tea, like the matcha green tea powder and the nuts, is it as healthy for you as eating spinach, just eating the spinach and the kale? Or, I mean, is it as healthy for you? And the frozen fruit, like if you put frozen fruit in there, you've got the protein powder and all that, I mean.
Yeah, I'll start with the frozen fruit because you mentioned that. I love frozen fruits and veggies because oftentimes they're picked at their prime and they're higher in some of the vitamins and minerals, not all of them. And then they're frozen, and they get like this underappreciated down the frozen food process aisle. But there are some good ones in there, and they don't have anything to preserve them except for just being frozen. So I like frozen fruit. So you are reducing your fiber intake when you make.
Or if you put flax, like I do flax and ground flax and chia.
Yeah, that's great. So then you're adding some extra fiber that's probably not getting chopped up. So every time you take a food and process it, whether you cook it or you chop it, you're breaking down some of the fiber and making it easier for your body to digest. So it's a really good way to get some of your fruits and vegetables when you're not feeling very great. And then it's cold, which can also help if you're not feeling great. You can make it really nutrient dense and add lots of fats to it, healthy fats hopefully, or you can make it a little bit lighter. But it is still very much a good, nutritionally complete way to get all your fruits and veggies. But the fiber content does go down a little bit. You don't get as many of the sticks and stone fiber, as I like to call, which can be good for your colon and some of the
If
other
you're doing
things.
it like just breakfast every morning and then eating your salad and greens during the day.
Yeah, I think it's
Yeah.
perfect. Yeah.
That's a good example of a balance. So I get nervous when somebody says that they're blending or juicing several times a day. So the only thing to watch for is if your goal is not weight gain, is be careful because that shake can be a lot more calories than you'd ever think by adding all that.
Yeah, I know.
Oftentimes I say, as you're adding it to the blender, think, would I eat this? And people say, well, no, that's why I'm making the shake. However, would you be eating all of this? Because it does blend up to be quite a lot of calories for a lot of people, so.
You mentioned organic, and, how important is that?
Good question. So, okay. There's a lot of research with regard to what is important with regard to organic. I can't say everything has to be organic. I would probably break everybody's pocketbook. But the important thing, a lot of people do suggest going organic when it comes to animal proteins. I usually will say go organic when you can with dairy, certainly with your red meats, with chicken, with your eggs. So there's your animal proteins. Again, listed on our resource list, as well as actually you can get it from the Environmental Working Group, who puts out the Dirty Dozen and Clean 15 every year with regard to produce. So that's also something that I like to share with people because it's interesting to know which fruit and vegetables have the highest amount of pesticide residue as opposed to the lowest. So the number one on the list is apples. So most of the things on what's called the Dirty Dozen list they have thin skin or they're delicate, like your berries, your peaches, nectarines, your apples, lettuce, those types of things.
I think I've seen bananas there, and I was wondering why.
No, bananas actually fall in the middle towards the bottom. So the Clean 15, which actually have a kind of a lower pesticide residue, tend to have a thicker skin, or I say are gas producers, like your onions, those types of things. I say they have their natural pesticides. The bugs are like, wow. So those are some interesting things because again, in the reality of shopping, when I do always support local farmers markets too. So when you're going to farmers market and you've got your $20, most farmers markets are organic, not all of them, but it's important to know where do I spend that $20, whether I'm at Safeway or whether I'm at a farmer's market. So that's where I say go with like your thinner skin, delicate things. Choose organic, I would suggest, and with the thicker things like your melons, avocados, those types of things, you can go conventional. So
would that eliminate like GMO type foods?
If it's organic, yes. And that's actually it's a whole nother topic with regard to labeling and things like that. So, that's also a bigger topic, but organic tends to pull in that. Yeah.
Can you explain, there's organic, like cottage cheese, organic yogurt. How is that process and how is that different from non-organic?
Good question.
No, go ahead.
So the organic industry actually is very, everybody's kind of on the same page with regard all the different industries, whether it's dairy, whether it's meat, and those types of things. So according to, as far as the organic regulations, so like with organic dairy, the cows cannot have, they can only actually have organic feed. So it starts with the feed. No antibiotics as far as, pesticides and those types of things. So it really kind of starts from the ground up, or whichever way you want to go. And so it actually ends up being kind of less chemicals and less, all those added things in the actual end result product. Same thing as far as with regard to organic meat, is no antibiotics, pesticides with regard to feed and those types of things. Really important piece, especially depending on what the media wants to grab a hold of, is issues with antibiotic resistant chicken and meats and things like that. So organic actually steps us away from those issues. Does that?
Are those easier for the body to digest as well, or?
Not necessarily easier to digest. What it does is it's exposing us to kind of less chemicals and things like that.
Environmental risk factors.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, does that answer that?
It helps. I just find
Do you
with
want
my
to add
body, organic dairy products seem to give me diarrhea. Yeah, because and the taste is different.
The taste is different. In fact, most people say that organic, everything tastes better. Some people, it
I have a
depends.
nephew that says the opposite, and he lives up in, like, by Reading, and I'm like, your neighbor
neighbors grow all this stuff.
Yeah.
and oh, we don't like it, it doesn't taste good. So I'm gonna give them that list.
Yeah,
and
it's
say,
really interesting to
Yeah.
get people's perceptions, yeah, so.
Sorry, my turn.
Sure.
As a challenge, every time measuring use cup, 1 ounce, 7 ounce, how, is there any better way? When you do cooking something, use recipe, that's easy, but when my daily meal, how do I know how many ounces I should eat?
Individual ounces.
Of protein?
Oh, is
Whatever.
with regard to,
Dieting.
He wants to know his daily measure. How would he measure best? A measuring cup for his ounces.
Go for it.
Or a tablespoon, or get a little scale.
Did
That's
you like-
92.
Did you like my hand thing where it's like a piece of cheese is about the size of your thumb with the knuckle? So there's some guides to hand models that you can use. So for like carbohydrates, a fist is about a cup. And so if you have really big fists, maybe use your friend's fist. Or don't use a kid's fist because then you'll be sad. You won't have enough.
I'm hungry.
So that's a good serving of carbs per meal, about a fistful, and hopefully you're choosing the whole grains if you can, tolerate that. If not, choose the more refined ones, that's great too. And then for meat, it's about the size of your palm is a good size, and we recommend 3 ounces, depending on what's going on. I don't know your history, but sometimes like with diabetes, we might actually encourage a little bit more protein, but lean proteins. For nuts, it's always like the small, a portion size is about the size of if you were to palm your hand like this, just to fill that area. Nuts you can eat like popcorn. They're so good. You just keep eating. So that's a good portion size. So you might even Google, because I don't have a guide to hand models, but you could Google like hand model portion sizes. I shouldn't say Google, you could Bing. You should research online. I shouldn't be plugging anybody. But yeah, you can research online different portion sizes using hand models. And that can really help when you're eating out if you're trying to restrict your portions and figure out what's actually a good portion size. Purple, you got.
Okay. Just going back to the sugar, is fruit included in that 10%, or is that in addition to the 10%?
That would be in addition to, because added sugars are going to be anything where you're adding this extra sugar, not sugar that's innately in our food. So milk has sugar, your grains are going to have sugar, carbohydrates, your fruit, your starchy vegetables, all of them are sources of carbohydrates. But it's your soda, your cake, your cookies, you could even maybe cross it to juice. Some of those are what we're trying to limit with that recommendation.
included like your honey or anything that you add to tea, anything that you add to your
Maple
plain
syrup.
yogurt, maple syrup. Yeah, that's exactly what's considered an added sugar.
Thanks.
Sure. In the back?
How do you define a healthy weight? Is it according to BMI, or how's that? How do you define that?
Yes, actually. We generally will use the BMI because it really kind of captures everybody who we encounter on a day-to-day basis. It pushes out anybody who comes in who's like muscle, weightlifting, that kind of thing. Sorry, it was like word finding. Or really the elderly, kind of frail elderly. That doesn't capture that. They kind of are off the scale. But yeah, BMI chart is actually your best resource, a reference to.
Can I break in with that just a little bit though as a trainer? Understanding the BMI chart is a tricky thing because you can be a very well-balanced body, muscle structure, bone structure, and some of that can be genetic, some of that can be the effectiveness of your exercise, and you can be in the obese category. That's when the BMI chart may not be the right answer, and doing a little bit more depth of size, lifestyle, diet makes a little more sense than just finding that one category. And that's where the elderly and the fitness, hyper fitness people don't fit in. But also the average person can sometimes get in a funny category on BMI.
Yeah, I actually.
In my opinion.
That absolutely brings up a good point. I generally will say that it's a guideline. What's important to do is because some people will look at it and be like, I've never, you know. So there we go. Is what, like looking back, to the future. Where did you come from? Where are you going? Where, what is realistic? But so it's just a guideline because we do get that. I've never been that. So
Yeah, it's tricky.
It is tricky. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
One thing I haven't really touched upon is soy products.
Yeah.
And I'm coming at this from an estrogen-positive breast cancer survivor, and I'm also a vegetarian.
Okay.
And I know I've heard both sides of the story, and I just kind of made the decision myself that I didn't need to kind of it before. I'm not going to change anything now. I'm just going to leave things as is in moderation. So I just wanted to, because I know the whole phytoestrogen products of soy products, I just wanted to hear what you had to say about the topic.
Absolutely. Good question. Yeah. We, like I said, nutrition is a huge topic. We could talk about it for days. Do you want to answer, or do you want?
Well, I could start,
Okay.
and then you can maybe
Okay.
elaborate. But the current recommendations, based on like a large group, kind of long-term studies, that up to 3 servings of whole food soy, so that's soy milk, tempeh, tofu, soybeans, edamame, per day, 3 servings, is considered safe, is potentially safe. That's what the current research says. It's not, I don't think, conclusive, but that's what it says. And there are some other studies that show that potentially has a protective effect for that specific type, the estrogen receptor positive breast cancer. The things we don't know as much about are the supplements. So your soy protein supplements, or anything where there's, soy that's been concentrated, processed down, and added. We don't know what effect that has on that type. So we kind of tell people to encourage people to avoid those types of products. But maybe you can add some more to it.
Well, it goes back to, again, kind of balance, first of all, and also looking at just whole foods in general. So when you bring up a soy supplement, it's processed, and it's heavily processed. Your fake chicken nuggets, your patties, especially when you look at the ingredients, first of all, it's a long list, and it usually starts with concentrated soy protein. Can you buy concentrated soy protein? No. If you find a product that is like a patty, and it starts with tofu, bean sprouts, carrots, you go, wow, I could make this at home. There's a good example of like something that sure has been processed, but it's made of whole soy food, of whole foods. So same thing is like, we don't want, we're not going to suggest that you have hot dogs. If you're going to have meat, have a good quality meat. Same thing as far as with your soy foods. It starts with the soybean, even though there is a processing to get to the soy milk and to get to the tofu. Those are actually known, they're really, whole soy foods. They're minimally processed, and they can absolutely be in a balanced diet. Absolutely. So if you choose, here's the one thing I will say, segue, because I'm looking at your face and you're like, this is where number one, it's an individual choice. Okay, that is also where anxiety is our enemy. If that makes you nervous, and some people will walk out from an hour with me going, well, she didn't know what she was talking about. I do know what I'm talking about. But if you don't feel comfortable with changing something, don't. If you're not used to having soy at all, maybe you're just used to maybe having edamame when you go out to a restaurant or something like that, then leave it at that. Some people say, I don't even know what to do with tofu, so leave it alone. Focus on your other plant-based proteins and go that route.
Yeah, and that's the decision I pretty much made. Is like, I'm not eating any more than I used to, which is not a whole lot, and I'm just leaving it alone. And if I happen to have tofu in my whatever it is tomorrow night.
There you go. Don't be afraid of it.
Yeah.
But again, you don't have to go seek it out either.
Exactly.
Good. Yes.
especially vegetable and fruit. I noticed sometime when I buy it, I read the label, it's made in Mexico. Or other countries, China, Canada. How trustworthy is that? Can you trust that what's it's really organic that came from Mexico, or there is a doubt?
That's a great question.
Do you want that one?
Well, I mean, that's maybe more of like a political question.
Yeah,
Because
it is.
you're getting
It
into
really is, yeah.
how like we import our fruits and veggies and how closely monitored those farming practices are in other countries and
the regulations that go with it.
yeah, and the regulations that go with it. And so I can't really speak to that. The one side for like fish, there's some really good guides out there as far as getting your fish from good sources that might be international versus here that's monitored by the Monterey Bay Aquarium, the seafoodwatch.org. But I know what you're talking about when you go into a store and it's they label where your apples came from and it says it's organic. But yeah, I mean, that's
The one thing I will speak, to be quite honest, I'm not going to necessarily answer the organic piece to that, but the location where it came from, that's a longer way away. So not only was it harvested, whatever it was, but then it had to travel to get to you. So oftentimes what I'll say to people is, and I've actually done this, and this is actually kind of segues into the frozen thing too. I've been in that situation where I need broccoli or I want broccoli or whatever, and I'm at the store, I'm not at a farmer's market, and I pick it up, and it's like rubbery. And thank you? No, thank you. That's telling me a number of different things. It's probably, could be 2 weeks old from the time it was harvested. It obviously wasn't stored correctly. I mean, there's a number of things going on with broccoli that I pick up and it's going, you know. That's where, in that situation, if you need broccoli for maybe a dinner party, go frozen. Absolutely, hands down, go frozen. So that's the thing. So again, that's a difficult question with regard to the organic and the different practices, but the location is a good indicator of, do I want that? Yeah. We have how are we doing? Oh, just a few more minutes. Yeah.
I had a question specifically around inflammation, and there's a lot written and we've gotten a lot of detail about foods and how they drive inflammation or cool it. What about exercise and the benefits from that? Is there a correlation? I haven't read it.
Of
But I've
exercise
always
and
wondered.
inflammation?
Yeah, inflammation, being able to reduce inflammation.
Reduce
So
it.
the only thing I could think of is that being active in the exercise reduces stress, which fuels inflammation, and go down that road. But I wondered if there was anything, that's my opinion.
I think in general, a body that, the body needs to move. So if you think about oxygenation, circulation, systemic support, we start there. So a body in motion, I think that kind of working with anti-inflammation, I think there are some studies that point towards that, and that people who are active, again, like healthier, typically healthier body weight, or body weight maintenance rather, as well as less joint irritation because the joints aren't as stiff, they're more fluid, more mobile, again, more stability in the body. I think the thing to consider would be, what are you doing with exercise? There are higher impact exercises, would be harder for the body to tolerate and can have a reactive or inflammatory response. So, for example, like lower impact, so swimming program occasionally, or just making sure you have variation in your program, that you're not doing the same old. So that's one of the keys with a varied activity routine or a weekly program. Less wear and tear, less stress on the body in general. So I think those things can help you manage or help work against inflammation with the exercise routine. Want to add to that? Or?
Well, I guess I want to kind of dissect the question a little bit. Is it going into exercise to reduce inflammation, or are you wondering, does exercise contribute to inflammation?
The benefits, so we see a lot and we're told a lot about the benefits of diet for reducing inflammation, which drives cancers, etc. So when you're dealing with damaged cells and things on this part, I know exercise is important, and I'm just wondering if there aren't side benefits that come to both helping healthy cells grow. I mean, is it blood flow, movement?
It's all of it. So it's necessarily anecdotal in that type of answer because there's not actually specific data per cancer. I mean, the diversity that we have in cancer also goes with the diversity that we have to consider in exercise for survivors as well as just regular population. The thinking is, as we know, the oxygen that flows, the blood increase that's going through the heart, you also may have that benefit that goes into the mucosal system. So if we're thinking about all systems functioning and raising up and working together, yes, the theory is it's going to help, just like it would help in a slow progressive motion of helping lymphedema, right? So all of these variations.
Side effects is what I was wondering.
Right, okay, so if we go specifically to that topic, it goes back to the slow progress. But it also goes back to studies being shown, and this is now very accurate from a study that's done with weightlifting for women who tend to be at the higher risk for lymphedema, inflammation. Yes, strength training will benefit, but it needs to be progressive, and it needs to be built up gradually to getting to that weight to the point where, yeah, you can lift a good amount of weight. It's just not starting in at an aggressive place. The progress is where they're saying, yeah, we see these things. They've shown even some studies that are saying potentially with stomach cancers, getting those epithelial cells, getting the mucosal cells going is the same process that we're seeing in exercise with the blood and oxygenation. So can I give you hardcore data? Not really. It's just that, yes, we believe that as we understand exercise and we understand the physiological benefits, it will aid in altering, changing inflammation. Flip side is, if you do too much, too fast, and you know this, you maybe even done it, I think we've all done it, you've got to go back, you can create inflammation. It doesn't mean that forever you're just taking it slow, but it means being mindful about the progress and the intention of where exercise is going to come in your life. Did that answer your question?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Well, yeah.
I've heard that high impact, doing exercise, high impact exercise at shorter duration is better than doing exercise like on a bike for 20 minutes, 15 or 20 minutes.
That's all over the news right now.
Yeah.
You want that one, Reagan?
Do I want that one?
Are we answering this question in regards to survivorship or is it a general question for fitness?
Survivorship.
Okay.
And I keep hearing these are what athletes are doing now. These are what the 49ers are doing. That's how they're training them.
Right. Not all of them are doing it.
Right. Yeah. That's. I mean, first of all, it's never a place to start. You know, you have to build up to any sort of tolerance for that level because there will be a pretty high reactive response from your body in starting to train like that. So.
It's a big one.
It is a big one, and.
I heard that by doing that, you're killing cancer cells. You're killing cancer cells. So.
Okay, so biggest, broadest thing I think that we can say for sure is that there's not a cure, right? So when somebody comes out with any kind of book or any kind of theory, this will disperse cancer cells.
We'd be handing it out.
I wouldn't have a
Right,
job.
right,
Which,
exactly.
that's going to be the best day of my life when I don't have this job anymore, right?
There's a
But
quick
we're
fix.
not there. And so that alone should kind of pull us back in thinking. But in looking at the broader scheme of things where they're saying, yes, you're going to burn more calories, all you need is that 15 minutes every day. Sure, to a degree, you need to move 15 minutes every day. But do I want you to actually pull out that 3-foot box and stand there and go up and down for that high intensity? No, because really the fallout's going to be you're more likely to get injured
Right.
and then not do any activity for months past that. So when you're looking at that article, and I've read those articles too, you can have an efficient workout quickly. Yes, it's true. But you have to decide who's doing it, why are they doing it, and are they safe?
Yeah.
To me.
It's not sustainable for everyone. And
Yes.
that's a way to begin. If you have a walking program, let's say it's 30 minutes, every 5th minute potentially, just to walk a little faster. So you start working with intervals before you dive into anything that's like a full program at a high intensity level. Does that make sense?
Yeah. High
So you
intensity
start
is where
as
it's
like a
risky.
smaller scale, and you just add like a 60-second, I call them a boost or like a burst. Or I mean, just so you, every 5th, like 5 minute, 10 minute, 15 minute, just go a little bit faster. Or go up a hill, or walk up a flight of stairs. And then, carry on. And over time, you'll start responding to that. And your workout will have a higher intensity level.
Yeah. And that's part of the progress that we're talking about too. And when you're talking to a friend or you're deciding you're on a walking program, walk with intention. Make that plan, make that goal, because we can stall. If we keep doing the same thing every day, the body's just going to adapt and we're going to stay right where we are. You got to mix it up a little bit. You got to walk a little bit faster, or on one day of the week, you got to take a load of a hill.
Challenge yourself.
Yeah.
Challenge
And that
a
can
little,
be slow
yeah.
to progress. And again, know where you are, be responsible for what you're feeling and what you know potentially is a risk or where that vulnerability may come. Surgery site, chemo, medication you're on, you're going to have a lot of variables. Just be wise and talk about it. Talk about it with a friend. Make a plan.
Thank you guys.
Thank
for
you.
having us.
Great.